Again, thanks to everyone who's joined so far. I know we'll get quite a few more people joining in the last couple of minutes. That's when we always see the most connections, but those who are here right now, welcome. And on probably your right-hand side, you might have to pop it open. You'll see a poll question, and we're just curious to see what areas you work in, just so we can kind of get a feel for the audience today. And if so, we can make sure we really focus on how the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways and any questions might be relevant to folks in those roles. And just a couple of reminders to just go ahead and keep yourself muted and keep your video off, just to help with any bandwidth issues. Make sure everyone has a good connection. So it's 1 o'clock. We'll give it about 1 more minute to make sure everyone gets connected here. But we also do want to stay on schedule, so we won't take up too much of your time. All right, well, since it's 1:01, that's kind of my magical time I go with. I give everyone until 1:01. So thank you all for joining us today for Transfer Talk Tuesday. And just a few housekeeping reminders one last time, and to please keep yourself muted during the presentation. We will have time at the end where you can unmute yourself and ask questions. And also go ahead and keep your video turned off to help everyone have a good connection. And then also just to make sure you all know, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our website later in case there's anything you want to double check on, or if you want to share it with any colleagues who couldn't be here today. And then we do have a poll question here that I'll close out in just a second. So you have maybe 30 more seconds to go ahead and answer that poll. And we're just trying to find out what area everyone works in. So if we can kind of fine tune any of our answers based on, if we have a lot of people from a certain area, we'll do that. I know they're not all a perfect match, but give us your best shot. So thank you again. Good afternoon. Welcome. And this is actually, so this webinar is called 23 OGTPs, Now What? And this is the last in our summer series of Transfer Talk Tuesday. And I am joined today by Dr. Candace Grant, who's the Senior Director of the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways, which reminds me to introduce myself. I'm Holly Hall. I'm the Assistant Director for the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways. And for our presentation today, we're going to start out with a very brief overview of Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways in case you're not very familiar. But then we do want to launch in to a little bit about what's happening now that they're really in implementation. So we have 23 finalized pathways. And today's presentation is going to be kind of a choose your own adventure style. So we're going to let you guys kind of select the questions that we answer. So hopefully that goes off perfectly seamlessly, as I imagine it will. But without any further ado, and I'll just share just to let everyone know, we have a variety of folks here, but we actually have a lot of people from registrars' offices, so we'll keep that in mind, as well as a lot of people who work in transfer offices and admissions and enrollment, and there's a fair amount of other, so we'll figure out how we can help you guys later on as well. But with that, we'll start out with this, and then at the end, you can always type in a question in the chat, or at the end of the presentation, we'll let you know when you can unmute and just ask it verbally if that's easier. But now I will hand things off to Candace to give a brief overview.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm just going to start off in case I think a lot of you hopefully have heard of the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways. But I just wanted to start out kind of reiterating some of the guiding principles and the whole idea behind it. So the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways is based on Ohio Revised Code, which was passed in 2015, that said that the chancellor and his agents would help develop pathways that allowed for smooth transition from associate degree into bachelor degree programs in an equivalent field. So it's an effort that's directly related to Ohio's initiatives in college affordability and degree completion. And all of this work, of course, is supported by a steering committee made up of provosts, vice provosts, and presidents from across the state, representing all regions of the state. And of course, I don't want to fail to mention that it's an initiative that, while it's a new initiative, it's building upon the 30 years of transfer work that's already happened in the state. So that includes the Ohio Transfer Module, the OTM, the Transfer Assurance Guides tags, and C tags, and of course also M tags as well. And so it's using all of the work that's already been done and bringing it together in order to make these pathways. As with all of our initiatives, it is, of course, faculty driven and student centered. Holly, you can go to the next slide. And part of this process is that these faculty panels are larger than your normal faculty panels. They're, you know, any institution that has a program is welcome to have a representative. And so these panels have been, 30 people plus panels. And they've had, really great discussions as they've gone forward and as they continue to move forward. From there, we, of course, seek statewide endorsement for whatever pathway that the faculty panels develop. And then we move into implementation, which is largely what we want to talk about today. We have 23 pathways currently in that phase, and we are trying to work right now on finalizing all institutional templates. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward, or if you have questions about that. On this web page as well, we also have this presentation after, but is our student advisor website, which is at ohiohighered.org/OGTP. And then we also have an administrative website, which has the composition of committees, like you can see who's on each faculty panel. And if you, of course, need a special list of everyone from your institution, we're happy to send that. So please feel free to ask, as well as minutes from meetings and different resources like that. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started in the choose your own adventure portion of this presentation. So Holly's about to put up a poll here. Here are the general questions, and you can pick which you would like to hear about. A, who is eligible to participate in OGTP? B, what is the relationship between College Credit Plus and OGTP? Or C, what exactly does completion of an OGTP mean for a student?
We have some inspiring music to keep you thinking about where your adventure is going to go. All right, it looks like we have about half the responses in, so we'll give it just a couple more moments before we see which way it's going to go. And if we get a couple of the answers are really popular, we'll address both, or if there's time at the end, we can circle back. But we do have a clear lead right now, so give it just another second. Make sure. Okay, so I'm going to close the poll. I think it might give you another second if you're still working on that. Looks like it'll give you 15 seconds, but we'll start to move forward. And just a reminder, in the chat box, Zoe is posting any links that we share. So those couple of links Candace just mentioned are in the chat box. And then afterward, we will also put this PowerPoint on the Transfer Talk Tuesday website under our the 23 OGTPs section, in case you want to reference any of the links there or go back and see any of our answers or visuals. So what we had, we're going to go with choice C. That was actually a clear winner. Got about a lot of the votes, about half of them, which is what exactly does completion of an OGTP mean for a student? So what we'll see, and that question kind of stems, from a variety of areas. We've had people, wondering what the guarantee gets them, or how it might be different from other initiatives. So what what it means and what it doesn't mean are both important. So it does not guarantee admission to a certain program or institution. So if there are, if a university has a highly competitive program, it doesn't guarantee student admission to that. They still have to meet the same admission standards. But what it does mean is that they will be granted junior standing at that university and will be able to complete their bachelor's degree in approximately 60 additional credit hours, unless we say otherwise, which could possibly be the case down the road with maybe really intense programs. But so far that's been the case. And that remaining coursework they would need to complete at the university is being spelled out very clearly in our OGTP templates that you can find online. So it'll include the course equivalencies from the what the students are taking during their associate program, how those will apply at the university, and then what they have left, which should stick just around 60 credit hours. So that is what it means. So I feel like, unless Candace, if you have anything else to add, we can move on to the next set of questions. And we might go back and circle back to the College Credit Plus question, because we did have a few people select that as well. So I think we are going to.
And you can always feel free to take note and ask these questions at the end if the question you wanted to know the answer to isn't answered right now. So next set of questions, institutional questions. A, what if our institution changes our degree, general education, or major requirements after our institutional pathway has been approved already? B, how will institutions know that a student successfully completed an OGTP and are entitled to its guarantees? And C, when will all the institutional pathways for the 23 OGTPs be posted? Go ahead, make your pick.
Looks like we have about half of them thrown in. I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, so you have about 15 more seconds. Got a couple questions, couple that are pretty close, so we'll see how that sorts itself out. I might have to give you 2 questions here. Okay. So it looks like for this round of questions, question B was the most popular, but question A had quite a few selected as well. So we might go ahead and I'll answer that one as well. But first, we'll start out with question B, which was, how will institutions know that a student successfully completed an OGTP and are entitled to its guarantees? So what we have to do in that situation, so the community colleges are going to include that on the transcript. And this on the screen here, you'll see kind of an example of what it might look like. And a lot of this is a little above my head, but I do know we have a lot of folks from Registrar's Office who joined today. So this probably looks familiar to you, as well as there's also some portion with kind of more of a coding look that our technology folks, Mitch and Revathi, have helped us out with. So that way, once the transcript is sent to the university, they will be aware that the student completed the OGTP, as well as which specific one. So you'll see here in this red circle, it notes Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathway Business, just so the community college certified that the student completed the Business Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathway.
And so it will be up to the community college registrar's office to certify that completion. So you need to make sure that the student has met the terms that your institution has put forth in your pathway. That should all be spelled out on your own institutional template. And so if they have, then you can provide them this note on their academic record that it's been met. And then the university has the obligation to honor that, and the student should have left only exactly what they have put into their remaining coursework as well.
Yeah, and I'll say, Candace, we had a follow-up question here asking if it's always in we'll see if we can't answer this. We'll check with our technology folks if we need to. But is it always in the notes section and listed as shown here in the presentation? And this is someone from a university because they would need to take this to their information technology department to help them make sure they're reading these correctly. Or does it show on the summary transcript? So I know I can't answer that question at this moment, but if Mitch
or Revathy are there and are able to answer quickly, they can. Otherwise, just send us a message at some point, Mitch and Revathy, and we can answer at the end of the presentation as well. That's a great question, though.
Yeah, this will not appear on the summary transcript. This is Revathy answering that question. This will appear only in the PDF version of the transcript currently, but we do have plans to include this as part of the summary.
Okay. Thank you, Revathy. Glad you were there. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Do you have a time frame on that, Revathy?
Say that again, Candace.
Do you have a time frame on the plans? I mean, just kind of an expected time frame?
No, we have to work with the OTEC on this.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we'll keep you updated as we know more.
Yeah, a lot is definitely evolving in this area now that, as you know, as we said, we're in the implementation now and it's really getting rolling. We actually have students completing these. So getting these done, you know, tackling these challenges as we can. And I did want to circle back to question A because we had quite a few people ask about that as well, which was what if our institution changes our degree, general education, or major requirements after a pathway is approved? You know, we expect that'll, you know, happen fairly regularly, especially with a lot of places have been looking at their general education. And all you'll need to do at this point is just email Candace or I and let us know. So we will ask annually for updates from everyone, but you know, if you know of any, please just reach out to us directly and we'll change it. You know, and depending on how substantial the change is, if we need to archive the pathway that has been approved and, you know, put up a totally new one, we'll do that. So that way, if you still need to reference the old version for students who are already following that one, we'll still make sure it's available. If it's a small change, and we just need to, if it's a very small change, we might not need to do that, but that is certainly an option. So I think with that, we will get ready to move on to our next set of questions. So I will pull the poll up here.
Okay, so the big picture questions. Would you like to know, A, what is the relationship between the work of the Ohio Mathematics Initiative, or OMI, and the OGTPs? B, how will the upcoming revisions to the OTM affect the OGTPs? C, how do bilateral agreements fit into all this? Or D, what about private colleges and universities?
All right. Give you about 15 seconds to get your answers in there. We have most of them in. Let's see, Candace. We have two that are pretty popular, so looks like we're probably gonna address a couple of them. So the most popular one was question B, but we had quite a few people select question C as well. So we might wanna go ahead and address both B and C.
Okay, let's go ahead to B first then. How will the upcoming revisions to the OTM affect the OGTPs? So this is kind of the model that is currently being proposed. As it's proposed, the OTM would remain at 36 credit hours with those 24 core hours and up to 12, exploration, flexible hours. And I will say that throughout the process of discussing these revisions, what's happened is that we've seen that the value, there's been a lot of discussion around the value of the OGTPs. And so I think you'll see that the upcoming revisions will continue to strengthen the relationship between the OTM and the OGTPs. In fact, you can see that they're even referenced in this model. If a student knows what they want to major in, they should be following the OTM as it's laid out in the OGTPs, where, it's specified what those additional credit hours would look like, and where it's specified even what maybe social behavioral sciences or math and sciences or arts and humanities a student would want to take within the Ohio Transfer module. Although that name also might be changing, but it will still be that same idea. And then I think that the revision will go a step further, and for students who do not know what they want to major in, I kind of used the OGTPs very generally to kind of think about what would those 12 hours, what should those 12 hours be? So, you know, we know for an associate of science student, they do not need probably a ton more social behavioral sciences. They probably don't need a bunch of arts and humanities. So they shouldn't just keep willy-nilly taking those courses. It'd be advised to be taking more math and sciences with those hours. And, you know, none of this is, of course, groundbreaking, but I think just putting it out there more explicitly, we're hoping to help students and better guide students in those, and then also then eventually funnel them into the pathways if they are in fact trying to complete an associate degree. Okay, go to the next one. Bilateral agreements. So how do bilateral agreements fit into all of this? I like to think of the Ohio Guaranteed Transfer Pathways as creating a baseline of credit across the state, regardless of which community college a student attends or which university they end up transferring to. You know that you will at least get this much credit. That said, you know, bilateral agreements are wonderful, and they provide, you know, additional stronger relationships between strong regional partners. And so I think that in our mind, we want to see bilateral agreements that are harmonious with the guaranteed transfer pathways in terms of them at least providing the same credit that is provided by the guaranteed transfer pathway, no less. However, it's also an opportunity that maybe it provides additional guarantees or additional certainty for students. So maybe there's additional courses that would transfer outside of our statewide guarantees. Maybe there's some sort of special admissions piece to it. What has happened is that knowing all this, we did a little bit of a study on the bilateral agreements. We asked the universities to assess their bilateral agreements in line and see how they lined up with the OGTPs. And what we found is that in general, there was a pretty good alignment. There were a couple outliers. And so based on this discussion with the steering committee, they proposed the following. Since bilateral agreements are all tend to be limited term agreements, institutions should make sure as their bilaterals are coming up for renewal that they're examined in relation to the OGTP. And so maybe they would choose to just use the OGTP, or perhaps, you know, renew their bilateral, whichever happens, and that's fine. But just making sure that the OGTPs are kept in mind as these come up for renewal. Second part of this is, though, we recognize that in some cases, the bilateral agreements may be in a little bit of conflict or not quite in alignment with the OGTPs, but they want the institutions decide they should continue to be offered. The steering committee is asking that institutions begin to collect data on the relationship in order to demonstrate its efficacy for student transfer outcomes in order to show the necessity of that relationship. And this memo is available at the link below, so you'll be able to look that up if you want to read it for yourself.
Okay. And then we'll move on to our last set of questions here.
Yep, so these are questions about the future. So would you like to know, A, what new OGTPs are under development? B, what about applied associate degrees or other specialized bachelor degree areas? How is this going to work? C, will any revisions happen to the 23 finalized pathways? Or D, how will we know if the OGTP initiative is effective?
Got 2/3 rolling in. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So you have about 15 seconds. Get your choices in, but it looks like we have a pretty clear winner. But we'll probably circle back to at least a couple of these other questions. So Candace, it looks like most folks chose question B.
Okay. So this is something that came up pretty quickly in the first year of working on the guaranteed transfer pathways, and it's something that we have discussed with the steering committee. And so this is the excerpt from the implementation policy, what it says about that. But basically, that there are certain areas that require a high degree of specialization at the bachelor degree level, and as a result, the coursework necessary may not be offered at the community college level. For these areas, such as education and engineering, the faculty panels have been empowered to consider alternative configurations that would best serve students. And so the best interest of students is the focus of these efforts, and recognizing that a 2+2 may not necessarily work in all cases. However, we're working with the panels to be flexible and also just think very creatively. So for engineering, for instance, engineering science, not engineering technology, but engineering science, there might be a 1+3 sort of configuration, and we think in terms of credit when it's due to make sure there's a guaranteed reverse transfer back for the completion for community colleges in those cases. There also might be a 2+2 option for those institutions that are able to offer the beginning engineering courses, since we know there are at least a couple, maybe 2 or 3 in the state that can do so. And so we're just trying to figure out, be creative, but also give community colleges that do have the coursework necessary the opportunity to have a closer to a 2+2 agreement, and those that don't, but still may be able to funnel students on the pathway, also an opportunity here. For applied degrees, it's a little bit of a different situation, but we're in the process of working on a number of applied degrees. You'll likely see the first of those this fall, mechanical engineering technology and electrical engineering technology, based on their endorsement survey results, are ready to move forward. We're just trying to make sure we have figured out, have all our ducks in a row for the first implementation of these applied degrees, since it will look a little bit different than all of our previous OGTPs, since those are all Associate of Arts or Associate of Science degrees. We're also hoping to wrap up others in the health sciences, such as nursing, dietetics, and medical laboratory this fall. So there are a number of different areas underway. We also have a social work applied degree or it's more human services at the community college level, that we'll be working on trying to wrap up as well. So there are a number of different areas. They may look slightly different. They may have slightly different language and a little bit more of caveats, just because community college programs do look so different. And I think it'll be also interesting because we know that certain community colleges actually offer bachelor's degrees, such as in mechanical engineering technology. So you'll also see the first iteration of community colleges that are able to offer the completion coursework for the bachelor's degree in engineering technology. So that is all good, and we're looking forward to getting some of that implemented this fall.
Okay, well, so what we'll do, make sure if anyone is going to have to leave soon, we will just give a few quick announcements, but we'll circle back to some of these other questions. We had a few that were, pretty close, like second or third choices. But we do just want to give a few reminders first. So thanks for everyone for tuning in so far. And as I mentioned, this is the last of our summer up series, but we do plan to continue this in the fall. We're going to switch to just one per month, because everyone's going to be really busy and have a lot on their plates. And we will continue to record these and make them available online. We do plan to have our next one September 15th. We're going to stick to the Tuesday at 1 p.m. time. So if you just keep an eye on our Transfer Talk Tuesday website, or we'll send out an email with some updated information soon. But we will be doing one a month. I think it's going to fall on the third Tuesday. of each month. So stay tuned for those topics, and we hope you'll join us for those. And then also you'll see a link in the chat for a Survey Monkey. So of course, just to let us know how we did today, if you found this presentation useful, and if you have any ideas for future talks. So we'd appreciate any feedback that you have there. But now at this time, what we'll do is we can circle back to some questions, or feel free to put them in the chat or unmute at this time. So Candace, I will read one I got in the chat, so we'll start with that. But if not, I know someone had indicated they, were definitely interested in hearing some of these other responses. So we'll circle back and we'll stick around, but we know some of you have to bow out. You can always come check the recording later. So again, thank you all for tuning in if you have to go. But we do have a question, which is, can Ohio institutions do 3+1 agreements with neighboring states would transfer back to the community college? So I'm going to not answer that question, I think. Let's see.
The 3+1 agreements and then transferring back. I'm not 100% sure.
Sent in during the applied degree type discussion.
I mean, institutions are welcome to have 3+1 agreements. So I think that's not a problem at all. I'm not sure about the transferring back, but if you have other arrangements, we know some of our community colleges on the borders have strong agreements with universities outside of the state, and that's perfectly fine, and that's great for your students. So, that's of course welcome.
Similar to some of the private institutions in Ohio as well.
Right.
Sometimes there's those type of agreements. And let's see, someone asked about info relating to CCP. So we did have that kind of as a question. So we'll circle back to that one first. So people might be curious about how this relates to the College Credit Plus program. And these kind of, they can tie in really, really well together. So that, in case you don't know, that's the dual enrollment program in Ohio. So high school students can take college courses and earn college credit. And since the OGTPs map out the first 2 years of coursework for a variety of pathways or majors, they're really just a great form of guidance for College Credit Plus students, as well as their high school guidance counselors or any community college advisors or university advisors who are working with College Credit Plus students to help them select courses that will get them on a very clean track for those programs, because these were brought together from statewide agreements. And because they were built on the TAG courses and the OTM courses, so even if they might end up at a different institution, we know these will transfer and help get those College Credit Plus students on the right track for the areas that they're interested in. And they would also be eligible, if they, some College Credit Plus students are completing associate degrees by the time they graduate high school, or getting a very large chunk of a degree done. So they can certainly kind of go into these pathways as well. And they can, and even if they're not sure of their exact major, they can still kind of look at, similar ones in the social sciences. We also have information if students aren't sure what social science they want to do, but we have a guide that gives them some advice on how to stay on track while they're still figuring out which social science course major they want to complete.
Thanks, Holly. I think we have another question. Will there be revisions to the 23 finalized pathways? The answer is yes. Our review cycle currently, as written in the implementation policy, is every 3 years. So we're actually already approaching the first revision for starting with business and then the rest of the pathways. So yes, it will be happening. We'll bring the faculty panel together. That's not to say it will change a lot, but it will be at least a reaffirmation of the pathway, and there might be minor changes. The other thing you will see with pathways is that we've been very, very busy. Jesse has been very, very busy working with the TAG writing panels, and many of these at the request of the OGTP faculty panels. So you might have seen this spring that there was a flood of new TAG courses. We haven't added those into the pathways yet, just because we are coming up on that revision cycle next year. So we thought that we'd wait, but you'll probably see new tags added in. And if a pathway was just recently revised and then new tags were created, it will likely, those will get added more quickly than we won't wait to add them like we are this time. However, you can, in the interim, you can definitely use those courses, especially once you get the tag course at your institution approved. You can use that beforehand to fill elective slots or other pieces of the pathway like that.
And I will go ahead and circle back now to a couple of the other future questions because they were actually pretty close choices. We did have quite a few folks wanting to know how will you know if the OGTP initiative is effective? Because it's one of the most important questions, I think.
Right. And so what we have up here is our website, our current administrative website, where you can see the current research that's been done. We tried to do some baseline research on what each of these areas looked like in terms of transfer, and that information is already posted. In the interim, we've been working on, and this is still a work in progress, but we're working with HEI to find a way for institutions to be able to enter an indication that a student is on a pathway, so that we can see both at the community college level and the university level whether that pathway, whether students complete the pathway, and then, especially, do they transfer and finish the rest of the pathway? Do they, choose to go a different direction and finish a different program? Do they not complete at all? All these are questions that we want to be able to answer, and we're going to be able to do so hopefully through HEI and through getting our institutions to enter that data.
All right.
Which, if you want to add anything to that, you can add something. Our director of technology may have things to add, but let's hear the next question. So will the OGTPs be date ranged, or how will we know which version the student completed if there are changes? The idea of the OGTPs is we do have an effective date on every single one of them, and our effective year. So we put the academic year it's effective. So we think of it a little bit like a course catalog. And that's why anything with any significant changes, we'll have a new effective date, and we will archive them so that the old ones are available. I know that we've had some universities tell us, that of course they do want to know when the student started the pathway, because that way they would honor the remaining coursework effective for that year, since that's what the student came in on the understanding that they would use. And then I think it's the same as course catalogs, where if a student wants to use the most current OGTP and meet those requirements, they are welcome to do so, but they need to meet the new requirements. Let's see. Oh, and Revati just sent out a link about the summary transcript if you want to take a look in your chat boxes. Have you seen any students complete the business pathway yet? I think that I've heard from our community colleges that the first of their students are completing this year, is what I've heard. Anyone from a community college want to answer that? But yes, you should be seeing some of those students, especially in business, probably starting even this coming academic year.
And everyone, keep popping questions in the chat, especially if you have ones we didn't cover. But I did want to share. A lot of people also were curious to know what new OGTPs are under development.
Okay, thanks, Holly. So as I mentioned, the engineering technology, electrical and mechanical should be coming up for implementation this fall. We're working still at the panels to finalize areas in the health sciences and nursing, dietetics, and medical laboratory. And then the communications panel is still working on public relations and advertising, journalism, and telecommunications. Engineering is still working, since it's one of those areas that is a little bit more specialized. It'll probably look a little bit different. So that's still a discussion that's happening, as well as education. Although I'm expecting that this fall you may see endorsement surveys for early childhood and intervention specialists, but still some discussion happening around the AYA and middle childhood. And then we're also going to be starting some new health sciences this fall. We'll be just getting the faculty panels going in health information management, exercise science, OTPT, respiratory therapy as well, potentially. And computer science and information technology is another panel that is currently a little bit on hold, but there are 3 tag writing panels currently that have proposed learning outcomes for tag courses in those areas. And we're just trying to clean up a little bit and make sure that there's a good alignment with the C tags that already exist in those areas. But once we've done that, we'll be able to move forward. And I think once those tags are in place, then the panels have already drafted pathways. In fact, they drafted them with the courses they thought should be tags. So I think it'll be pretty quick from there to have pathways in those areas. And then we also have some ongoing work in fire science, EMS, EMT, and criminal justice as well. Thank you. Primary education, we'll have to update all of our files to say that. Anyone else have any other questions?
You want Candace, I can keep circling back to the ones we didn't get to. I think we did at least tackle some of like the ones that got the highest number of votes. But while you're here, if you still want to stay on, I think we're happy to, mention a few of the others. Out of the general questions, the only one we didn't touch on was who's eligible to participate, and it's pretty much anyone. So any student completing an associate degree at an Ohio public institution. So it's important to point out that not every community college offers every pathway. Some of them might, not be large enough to offer every pathway, or don't specialize in those areas. So you would want to check to see if the institution the student plans to attend offers us the pathway they're interested in. Which you can do that through our website in a couple of ways. One is, by going to that institution's page and seeing what pathways they offer. And that includes both ones that they have finalized and approved, as well as ones that they intend to offer, and they're just still working out the final details. You can also navigate the pathways by major academic area. So if you say someone's interested in economics, you can go to the economics page and see who offers it both on the community college end as well as on the university end. So I know I'm going to tackle that. Is there anything? When will they all be posted? We didn't talk about that, and Candace kind of referenced it in a different question, and we've really made quite a bit of progress recently, especially this summer, and thanks to any of you guys out there who have worked with us in reviewing and finalizing these. But basically how you'll know is, as I just mentioned, you'll be able to see, this was a screenshot from the economics pathway page. And if it's got a blue hyperlink, that means that college or university has a finalized and approved pathway, and you can click that hyperlink to see it. If they're not hyperlinked, it means they are intending to offer it. We're just still working out the final details with them, but they should hopefully be up soon. We're working hard. We have a lot of great people working with us to get these finalized. I know we have quite a few institutions we're working with right now to get theirs up soon. So that's where you can find out that information.
And keep checking back. We are constantly adding them weekly. So it's just been a process. For those of you who have worked with us, we've gone through your pathways line by line, as well as your curriculum line by line, to compare to make sure everything makes sense and appears to be meeting all requirements for your degree requirements, as well as the pathway requirements.
And we have a question in the chat. So if a student stops out while within an Ohio guaranteed transfer pathway and the OGTP changes, is there policy on staying on the original pathway, or is it institutional policy which governs stop outs? So I'd say it's kind of twofold. We do have a time frame in our implementation policy. I guess if you kind of want to tackle it from a community college perspective and in a university perspective, because we know students aren't even always doing these full time. They might be pursuing these part time, so it might take them more than the traditional 2 years to do the associate degree and 2 years to finish the bachelor's degree. So we do have some language on that. Candace, is it how many years?
I think the steering committee decided that it was not going to be specified. However, I think based on looking at institutional, different course catalogs and institutional, it would be similar to that. So maybe around 5 years or so, but everyone should just work in good faith to make sure that students are, have their guarantees honored where they're applicable. And I think that this might be the same situation as a course catalog situation where if a student starts a program, that kind of following those same policies if they stopped out in a program on a course catalog that changed. But we may need to put something into the implementation policy as well. So thanks for bringing that up, Dave. We appreciate it.
Yeah, this will definitely be an evolving area as the OGTPs have been around longer. We'll have greater possibility for bigger changes. As Candace mentioned, we add new tag courses into certain pathways. Will the student be required to take that tag course depending on when they started and left and came back?
Yeah, the implementation policy is very much a living document. It was never intended to be written in stone. It was just trying to lay out the practices as we understood them. And then as we know more and as we understand different areas that need to be addressed, it'll continue to evolve and adjust as needed.
Yeah, continued evolution is definitely a big part of what we do.
Yeah. Well, if there aren't any other questions, Holly.
I can, we can tackle a couple others. We still have quite a few people hanging on to the call, so by all means, if you have to go, go. But we'll keep providing a little bit more information if you're able to stick around and want to hear a little bit more. So I guess we can circle back here to the couple we didn't address. Candace, you want to talk about the Ohio Mathematics Initiative and how it ties into OGTP?
Sure. So in case you're interested, and I think if anyone's from private institutions, I know we didn't address that very much here. However, I think that for private colleges and universities, this provides, first of all, just kind of, you can see the framework that the public institutions are using for transfer. And so, please, by all means, if you want to accept the pathways as well, I think that students would welcome that as well. And then the other piece that I think private institutions can very much build upon is this Ohio Mathematics Initiative. And I know this is changing a little bit, so there's going to be additional pathways here. But the pathways that they've identified are statistics, quantitative reasoning, and STEM preparation. And even within STEM preparation, the college algebra piece is changing as well. But they are reflected in the OGTPs. That not everywhere requires college algebra, or maybe college algebra eventually, hopefully, maybe even college algebra won't be the STEM preparation requirement. It'll be some sort of pre-calculus preparatory course that better equips students to succeed in the subsequent STEM courses. And so we're working closely with the OMI to make sure that whatever updates are happening to the thinking and math curriculum is also happening with the OGTPs. And in fact, it's written into our implementation policy that institutions should be evaluating their curriculum and working to align with the recommended mathematics that are listed in the Ohio Guarantee Transfer Pathways. And at a certain point, they'll be asked to provide justification as to why they're not in alignment, if that is the case. So just so you're aware, this is, we want to make sure that the excellent work of the OMI is being reflected. The best practices of mathematics are being reflected also in the guarantee transfer pathways. Okay.
And I think that actually covered all of our questions. So we did quite a few adventure do-overs here. So hopefully this format was helpful. So again, that survey link was included earlier. So if you haven't filled that out, go ahead and do that. And especially even any feedback on this format, it was kind of an experiment for us to try out. Let's see, and someone just asked where they can find that OMI graphic that we just shoot. I pulled it from a presentation before, but we will put this PowerPoint up on the website, so you'll be able to pull it from there. And there is the OMI math website. I'm not sure if this is on there though, or if we kind of drafted this.
And Zoe put the link to the OMI website in the chat box.
And then, yeah, if not, you can always find it in the PowerPoint. We'll try to get it up. I'll try to put it up right after this.
It is changing though, so
yes.
It's the current draft, but there's definitely a new one coming. So,
right, which will just make it better, more fine-tuned to different areas. So yeah, so thank you all for doing this, and yeah, feedback on the format or just any information, and we included our email addresses in there. So if you have any follow-up questions for Candace or I, feel free to reach out. And you know, sometimes these things are still evolving, so we'll figure it out if we don't have the answer right away.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you all have a great start to your fall semesters.
Yes, yeah, we really appreciate your time and joining us because we know things are really hectic right now. You have a lot of things you could be doing with your time, so we're really grateful that you tuned in. So yeah, I think with that, if I don't think we have any other questions coming into the chat, we addressed everything. Let me make sure. If not, if we accidentally missed anything, please reach out. But otherwise, we'll let you go and get on with your afternoon. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.